Hi everyone, welcome back to Talent Order's Breakfast Briefing, Friday, 17th of April 2020. The theme this week is the effect on fintech startups in the current climate. I'm joined by Mustafa Khanbhai, who is a growth strategy consultant at Seamlessly. Mustafa has worked at various fintechs focusing on leading the company's growth strategy. Mustafa, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. It must be a very difficult time now for loads of startups, given the current situation. And I'm really grateful for you to join us, as I'm sure our viewers will be, for any advice given today. Before I ask you any questions, would you be able to summarise a little bit about your background for our audience?
Sure thing. Thanks, Amy. Really good to join you this morning as well and share some of the insight that I've had. Just a little bit about me. So I've spent the last 4 years with Uber.
That's my boss. I'm going to tell him off after the video. Sorry, everybody.
No problem. I spent the last 4 years at Uber, scaling their operations across the UK. We running all of our back end, onboarding drivers, onboarding couriers, supporting them to be able to get onto the road. And it was a fantastic journey over the last 4 years, taking it from in many cities we didn't have Uber at all to launching, scaling up, and then making sure everybody can get a ride at the click of a button. And before that, I was at Virgin in their startup team, and we launched 3 startups, one in consumer insights, healthcare, and then also in customer tech support, and prior to that in M&A. So a mixed experience of corporate startups and scale-ups.
Mm-hmm. Amazing, thank you. And how are you reacting to the current global climate?
It's challenging is an underestimate. It's from a ways of working perspective. For me personally, I've always been a remote worker. My teams have always been across the UK or in different countries, and as a result, from that perspective, very used to Zoom, virtual sessions, just prepping teams and being ready to not have those in-person meetings. So from that perspective, it's been business as usual, and also working in an environment where you're at home with your family and trying to find a spot where you can do a meeting, etc. That's sort of been part of it. It's just more and more because there's no school and the like. So I think for many people, that change has been pretty significant. Is how do I know move from a working environment to now a home working environment? So that's been great for me, and I've been sharing tips with peers and colleagues of how you can maximize that time. From getting engagement with people, I think has been quite tough. Normally, you would, for your first instance, you try and get a meeting at the partner or the company you've been working with, immerse in their operations, and now you've got to try and get them to respond to you. There's a lot of different messages coming out on LinkedIn, from email, people trying to reach out to get that going, and then trying to find that slot. So that's trying to get engagement from parties that you're working with is tougher when you're looking externally and growing the market. But internally within the team, it's moving into this sort of new ways of working, and the companies that you're working with, helping them embrace that change as well.
Brilliant. Okay, fine. Yeah, no, it's challenging, definitely challenging for, I think, all businesses really, but I think particularly startups. I've heard stories that people, started their business in March or February, and I just think how awful. There's, just not good timing at all. So what advice do you offer to these startup businesses?
Startups is an interesting one. I think if we take some startups or more established built businesses that are maybe 5 to 10 years old to really seasoned businesses, I'm seeing different challenges across the spectrum. For businesses that have been running for well established, that have high operating expenses, high overheads, used to traditional offices they're working into as well. Their challenges is how to minimize costs, because they've seen either revenue and income coming down to zero, or trickling in, but expenses still pushing out. And even though there's a lot of aid from government in terms of how we aid from a workforce perspective, a lot of the other expenses are still live, and it becomes a cash flow challenge. So for those businesses, we're finding it's how do I manage my cash flow best to be able to get through this period of time. For businesses who have been operating well and through going through growth, I think they're seeing a unique opportunity whereby they're nimble, they can adapt their businesses, they can adapt their cost structure. If they're relatively well funded and have cash reserves, they can use this opportunity to really find their niche. If they've got a unique proposition, they're flexible and they can find people in the market who may have not been serviced by them before, or with a startup or an early stage company that may not be able to be procuring from companies because they're maybe shut down. They're finding opportunities to be able to offer their services, show the benefits of why working with them, and they're normally tech enabled as well, of why that new ways of working could be good. So they're using that as an opportunity to get their product out because they're live, their teams are live, and their service is slightly working in a different way as well. And from a startup perspective, it's super interesting because you've got your funding set, you've got your funding roadmap set for the next 6 months or 12 months, and you already had your milestones that you need to get through until you get to maybe your next Series A round, your next seed funding rounding, or your Series A or Series B funding round. And for startups, it's unique where the initial reaction could be, how do I scale down? How do I scale down some of my team? How do I maybe bring some of my costs down? But by doing that and doing that too drastically, you can really impact your product development or your innovation or your trialing and testing. And if you do that too aggressively, it means that you're in a bit of a vicious circle whereby you may not be able to meet those milestones to get those early stage proofs or validations of your business model to be able to get into that next round of funding post the situation that we're in. So my advice to earlier stage startups and the ones that I'm working with right now is really use this opportunity to maximize your testing and trialing. You've got a great opportunity to find, again, specific cohorts of customers that you can work with that are right now your most probably earliest adopters and happy to work with you and already trialing a product, really focusing on that cohort, find more of them. And right now you can be forgiven for a little bit in the product being a bit clunky or the experience evolving because nothing's perfect right now. Delivery times could be coming through, or the customer satisfaction is delayed, responses are delayed, etc. So you've got that opportunity to help learn and evolve and test your product in that climate. And those proof points that you'll get will only help you refine and validate your pitch when you go for that next funding round. By going too closed means that you're going to probably, you have a risk of missing that opportunity. And then when it does come out, when you come through this and you're going for that next round, you may not have validated your business model as aggressively as you needed to.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you think these type of companies should be doing more of in this current climate? I mean, you've mentioned kind of practicing and kind of practicing and getting it all seamless, if you will, for when everything's kind of sorted. Not that we know when that will be, but yeah, any other tips that you think they should be doing more of at this time?
So I think if your growth strategy, so understanding your growth strategy and your channels that are enabling you to do that. So if you've got, let's say, an element of your model is reliant on partnerships, and you may have struggled to connect with companies in the past on, let's say, if it's a remote way of working, or if it's your product is much around automation and taking reliance over physical bricks and mortars companies away. So, for example, one company we're working with is automating drop shipping, and they're taking the e-commerce journey, and rather where you may have not to have, previously you take physical delivery of your products and then you're dispatching it through, which is really difficult at the moment, trying to get stock, trying to pick and pack and deliver. This model is about automated shipping, so it goes straight from the manufacturer or your distributor straight out to your end customer, and you're just facilitating the trade. And there's a great opportunity for that product right now, and people are seeing it because the whole logistics changes have been disrupted. So what we're recommending there is, okay, well, fine, let's find out customers that are actually starting to use that piece and making sure we can onboard suppliers who can provide that service. So it's been a great opportunity to start those partnership discussions with companies that may be previously difficult to get, to say, well, here is how we're starting to see customers benefiting from our service. This is how it can work in the current situation. And then on a post-COVID scenario, how your service would work. So this opportunity has highlighted some of the challenges in the current setup, And when we do get hit with the situation that we're in now, how an automated or a tech-enabled service can assist. So it's giving that partner an opportunity to really understand it and understanding how it can benefit them. If they can start testing and trialing in a safe way, you've got that opportunity to launch it. But even if you don't start now, it's started to seed that thought, and it started to get those discussions going. So from a partner perspective, you've got companies that may have more bandwidth right now to speak because they may have seen a dip in demand, so they may be more willing to entertain them in those conversations. Others that are already seeing it and trialing it, they'll be able to push on it more. So that's when you're looking from a more of a partner model. When you're looking at more direct to consumer and you're sort of seeing that test volume coming through, it's really embrace that. Really focus your product onto those adopters that are really benefit from it. And I think it's very easy to sort of have a growth strategy which is quite broad and going after lots of groups. Here, I think the biggest piece is really focus your proposition on who's adopting it right now and tailor it for them, because that's going to be your user base that will grow with you naturally and organically when you start scaling operations down the line.
Okay, well, thank you. So my final question is, when we recover, how do you think the current situation will affect fintech startups, fintechs in general? What do you think the effect will be?
Well, an interesting stat here that I came across was Devere Group published that there's been a 72% increase in the rise of fintech apps across Europe, which is phenomenal at the moment. We're seeing that generally with adoption of companies like Zoom and this usage coming through, but we're also seeing that in other tech-enabled companies and just the usage from a free perspective, if it's a freemium service, or even part of their paid product coming through. And I think it's, from a fintech perspective, I think it's been critical because there's been a lot of legacy systems there. The inertia to change, to adopt some of the more disruptive challenger brands coming out is limited because there's quite bureaucratic processes and systems to overcome to try and adopt this. And this is just a forced, natural way that users have cried out for and saying, we need a different way of working because we can't go to our physical bank, or we can't go to our physical company in the way to be able to transact documents in that way as well. So for example, if it's insurance tech, and you'd be looking much more for an online way of transferring information. So it's forced that decision, as we know. And it's got stakeholders to really think about how we should be improving and evolving our customer experience and our proposition to embrace this technology. Working with trying to build it internally sometimes is going to be slow and taking a lot longer lead time. So there'll be my feeling is they'll be much more open to embrace partners and partner tech out there as well. So hence why I think seeding those discussions now, getting your MVP really refined and tested, and trialing that product through, and trying to get that engagement with key partners that you'll be working with. This is the critical time to be able to ride that curve when you come through.
Okay, well, thank you. I think, some really good advice there. That is all of my questions for today. So thank you again, Mustafa. I really appreciate you taking part. For everyone watching, I really hope this was helpful. If you have any further questions, please email me on amy.morris@talentorder.com, and I'll be sure to get them answered for you. Again, if you have any ideas as to what theme you'd like to hear about next, drop me a LinkedIn message or email me. If you did miss last week's breakfast briefing with Raj Singh, I will leave the link down below. I hope you're all safe and well. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Amy, stay safe.
And you. Bye.